The following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
The biggest thing that affected Justin Fields was a coaching change, and now he has an offensive coordinator, and he actually will fit a scheme to the quarterback, something we have not seen in a long time.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
When I see Twitter polls and national media and fans weighing in on who is going to have the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, and I see people commenting Chicago and it's not even close, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a little defensive.
I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
I don't think the Bears are a 2 to 3 win team. So to answer your question, no. The Bears aren't going to be the worst team in the NFL.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show. Oh boy, that intro is making me look dumber and dumber by the day. Hello and welcome everybody to Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone, and with me, as always, is my trusty producer and co-host, Alyssa Barbieri. Alyssa, the Bears didn't get embarrassed, but ultimately they continue their skid and have lost 7 straight. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I feel like we've gotten into this nice groove where we just know what to expect and how to talk about it. And kind of, we've been looking forward to the 2023 offseason for like 3 months now. So, I mean, it's another week, another loss. But hey, it was nice to see them give the Eagles, a Super Bowl contender, a scare for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting game. I mean, it was ebbs and flows, and it felt like they were in it until the very end. And you know, the Bears have, for the most part, there's with some exceptions, have not been completely blown out of most games this year, which keeps it. So they dangle that carrot out in front of you just long enough for them to, lose, and then you can get all pissed off afterwards. But they got to get another crack at it this week. Let's look ahead to this weekend. If, as tough as it may be, the Bears and Bears fans get to huddle around the fireplace on Christmas Eve day and watch them play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And something tells me that the eggnog will be pouring quite early in the Chicago area. But before we get into that, just in case this is your first time listening or watching Buffone 55, Alyssa, tell them how this show works. And hopefully there are no more sirens going around your head right now.
Absolutely. I'm sorry if you hear like background stuff. There's this thing in my neighborhood right now where like the Grinch is going around, and timed it perfectly for this show, by the way. Like as we're doing the intro. But I think he's really, I'm like, hey, happy holidays, guys. There's the Grinch.
On point right there. So perfect.
It's really, it's spitting in the spirit of the show and of the holiday season. So, as always, Buffone 55 has 3 segments, and we usually begin with our guest. And this week, we'll be talking to Chris Kepner, who is a contributor for Cover One, which is a great source for Buffalo Bills information. That's followed by our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. We then finish things up with a free-for-all that we call Buffone's Basement, where Aldo Gandia joins John and me, and the 3 of us try to avoid any Scrooge-like talk about the Bears. On a spoiler alert, I don't know if that's going to happen. John, take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. Like you said, our guest tonight is Chris Kepner, contributor over at cover1.net. Chris, welcome to Buffone 55. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm really excited about this Christmas Eve matchup. I love the festive background you guys have. I love the Grinch sirens going off. This is all really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's all just on point for what we're trying to do here. But we do appreciate you being on. We want to learn more about this Buffalo Bills team because it's a team that I think the Bears are striving to become at some point. So let's just start with the Bills overall. Let's take a holistic approach. It's no doubt that it's probably Super Bowl or bust for the Bills, and they'll likely have to go through the Chiefs to get there. But in your opinion, what obstacles are standing in the way of the Bills and a trip to the Super Bowl right now?
Consistency for sure, but injuries probably even more so. The Bills have been hit by a number of key injuries this season. We lost Micah Hyde in week 2. You saw Von Miller go down a couple weeks ago. Jordan Poyer has missed time with injury. Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano have both missed a game here and there. Despite all of that, the Bills defense has somehow managed to be a top 5 defense throughout the entire season so far. So as long as they can stay consistent and they can stop these key injuries from happening, then I think they've got a pretty good shot.
And we're going to get to this week's matchup. And when we're talking about the Bills offense, we have to start with Josh Allen. And I'm curious what your evaluation of how Allen has played this season, and should he be in the conversation for league MVP? Also, are there any lingering concerns with that right elbow injury?
Well, he's been playing pretty well despite the injury. I don't think there are any lingering concerns there. Certainly there's a little bit of a nagging concern among the fan base anytime you see your franchise quarterback sustain an injury. But from all indications, him playing through the injury has not been a risk of making it worse or affecting him in the long term. So that's been certainly a positive. As for his play, I mean, he did take a dip, obviously, dealing with the injury. And there have been some struggles on the offensive line, too. So he's had some trouble with protection and also with just getting new weapons up to speed. We drafted Khalil Shakir this year. There were hopes that he would come in and be maybe the answer at that slot receiver position. You saw Cole Beasley depart in the offseason, and he's back now, which is a source of a lot of optimism among the Bills fan base. Jamison Crowder was a key offseason acquisition. He went down with injury early on in camp, and we haven't really seen him much. But aside from Stephon Diggs, you've seen Gabriel Davis have some consistency issues, but he's a solid player. But they do want someone else to step up and be a reliable third weapon in that offense.
And speaking about the matchup coming up this weekend, I know that the Bills are probably trying to protect Josh Allen as much as possible before they go into the playoffs. But with a crazy weather forecast in the future coming up this weekend, could we expect a big dose of the running game with Devin Singletary and James Cook? Or could we see a lot of design runs for Josh Allen as well? Because we know that he has the ability to run just as much as Justin Fields does.
I've sort of given up trying to predict what they're going to do with the running game because it's been up and down all season. I mean, you saw in the few weeks after he sustained that UCL injury in his elbow, you saw more of an emphasis paid to the running game, and there were definitely some improvements. They were over that span. Actually, they were a top 5 rushing offense in the league, and they're the only team in the NFL this year that has over 100 rushing yards in every game. Now, a lot of that is Josh Allen and the design runs and some scrambling, of course. For this week, I would imagine that they will probably keep the designed QB runs on the shelf, and unless they really need it, they'll probably try to keep him throwing the ball and handing it off to his running backs, and trying to protect him, like you said, as we head towards the stretch run here.
And speaking of the passing game, Bears cornerback Jalen Johnson had quite the battle with Eagles receiver A.J. Brown last week, and now Johnson's going to face another huge test going up against Stephon Diggs. So I'm curious what makes Diggs so hard to defend, and can you also give us a rundown on the rest of the receiving core?
Stephon Diggs is a clinician in route running. I mean, he is so good at creating space and creating space quickly. He will make you look silly, honestly. If you if you're not ready, and it's tough to be ready for a guy like that. But teams really, it's tough to single cover Stephon Diggs. You really need to scheme him in double coverage and force the Bills to beat you with one of their other weapons. So I don't envy him that task. But if they can roll a safety over the top and keep Diggs bracketed throughout the game, he might still beat you. It's possible, but at least you are forcing the Bills to get a Dawson Knox or Gabriel Davis to get involved and have one of those games that they're contributing in a more meaningful way to the offense.
You talked about Dawson Knox, and I kind of wanted to touch on that just a little bit. He's coming off of a game in which he had a season-high 98 receiving yards on 6 catches, and this was a guy that had, at least from what I understand, had some high hopes this year. I believe got rewarded with a new contract from Buffalo. What can he possibly bring to the table this weekend? Is he on the ascending, or is he kind of just not really sure, inconsistent?
So the thing about Knox is he's been used a lot as a run blocker this year, and I think that, and more than anything else, that has hindered his statistical progression. So I don't know that it's really like a talent, or I don't think it's on him as a player so much as just how they're using him. You've seen them start to get to pay more attention to getting him involved out in the flat. He's become more of a check down route, one like a pressure valve release route for Josh. So it's definitely, I mean, like you said, last week was his best statistical game, but he's been contributing in other ways that maybe don't go as noticed on the stat sheet.
And the Bears pass rush has struggled getting pressure on quarterbacks this season. And you touched on a little bit of the offensive line struggles to keep Josh Allen upright. And I'm curious, what specific weaknesses along this offensive line are most noticeable that maybe Chicago can attack?
Well, first of all, you're going to need to get pressure with 4. I know it's a tough task. But yeah, if you start to blitz Josh Allen, he'll pick you apart. But that said, there are opportunities in the Bills' offensive line right now. Mitch Morse went down with an injury last week. It doesn't look like he's going to play. He is a top 10 center in the league. So losing him it's a significant loss. The interior O-line was already a little bit suspect. Ryan Bates has been banged up. So you've got your right guard, your starting right guard who's hurt as well. Spencer Brown is a second-year guy who's got a ton of athletic talent. He has struggled a little bit with balance issues. Guys coming off the edge have been able to put him off balance, and that's been a way to beat him. So, up the middle is probably going to be the best way to attack that O-line. But again, like if you can't get pressure with 4, it's going to be a long game, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we're kind of used to that. So that's okay. Let's switch sides of the ball now. The Bears' passing offense has been a work in progress all season. Justin Fields didn't have much to work with last week, of course. But it sounds like Chase Claypool and N'Keal Harry could return this week. Are there any weaknesses in this Bills secondary that Justin Fields could potentially take advantage of?
The Bills secondary, I mean, I guess I'd say DeMar Hamlin, although, he's probably taken more flack from the Bills fan base than is maybe deserved. He's had a couple of really noticeable missed tackles, but he's been good in coverage. And overall, I think he's been a great player filling in for Micah Hyde at the safety position. He is a second-year guy. These are his first, meaningful starting games. So but he's somebody that if you're going to attack, somewhere in that secondary, it would be either him or whoever is playing cornerback too. You're going to have Trey White on one side of the field. The last 2 games, he's played 100% of snaps, so he's fully back. In that sense, he's maybe not fully back to his all-pro level of play yet, but he is. You don't really want to target him. But whoever's on the other side, whether it's Kaiir Elam or Dane Jackson that would be another place to try to go.
And let's be honest, the Bears are going to most likely run the ball most of this game. And I mean, why not when you have the best run game in the NFL? And
Yeah.
Justin Fields has been a huge part of that. They're also, looks like the Bears are also getting back Khalil Herbert to go along with David Montgomery. Can we expect Chicago's run success to continue against this Bills defense? And I'm curious, how has Buffalo fared against mobile quarterbacks like Justin Fields this season?
So the Bills rushing defense had been really solid going into last week. They shut down Derrick Henry. They shut down Nick Chubb. Aside from one explosive play, they shut down Dalvin Cook. Raheem Mostert did a number on them last week, and most of that came from just a poor tackling game from the Bills. Part of that is the scheme that puts them in a position where they really have to move and get in position to make tackles. So there can be a little bit of more variance maybe than with other defensive schemes. But it was a problem last week. I would expect it to revert to the mean, which has been a really solid rushing defense. So that is an interesting matchup, the Bears rushing offense against the Bills defense. And as for mobile quarterbacks, the Bills did a pretty good job against Lamar Jackson. So, that's not to say that it's a small sample size. Justin Fields has certainly had an amazing year rushing the ball. It was cool to see him, tie that record for most consecutive games with a rushing touchdown. And yeah, it's good to see him starting to get those superlatives, right? Those records. We've been seeing that with Josh Allen over the past few years, and that's always exciting. I don't know if you've seen this going around, but if Josh Allen gets 29 passing yards on Saturday, he'll become the fastest QB ever to get to 18,000 passing yards and 3,000 rushing yards. There's only 11 QBs that have ever hit those numbers, by the way.
Freak of nature, absolute freak of nature playing quarterback. It's just so fun to watch him play. Staying in that same vein we were talking about with the Bills the run defense. I do want to go to a listener question. I'm gonna start with Jordan, and basically, how do you think the defense will handle Justin Fields' design run? Now, we talked about that already, but let's talk about the health issues on the D line. They got an elbow for Epinesa, and then a couple other guys nicked up there. What's the current status of the health-wise for the defensive line?
Well, you're missing Von Miller. That's probably the biggest. That's a big headline there. Epinesa, I'm not sure yet whether he's gonna play, but the Bills are deep on the D line, and they've got. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Gregory Rousseau. He's a second-year guy out of the University of Miami, but this is a guy whose ceiling just seems, sky high. In his rookie season, he had the most defensive stops per snap of any rookie since 2006. The next three guys were Nick Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Von Miller, and Rousseau was like 40% ahead of the second place guy. So just to give you an idea of like where he might end up as he moves along in his career. But he's healthy, and what he's done in this season is to add the pass rush piece. He was a really amazing run stopper last year. He was like top 5 run stopper in the league as a rookie. And now he's getting sacks and he's just really been a force on the end of that line. So you've got Ed Oliver, who's also just a beast in the middle of the line. So, I mean, despite the injuries, I think I said earlier that the Bills defense has done an amazing job. And Leslie Frazier, who honestly, I was shocked that the Bears didn't hire him the last go around. I thought he was going to be your new head coach, just with the pedigree there, having played on that 85 Bears defense. But he's just done a tremendous job of coaching these guys and keeping them consistent despite all of the injuries.
Before I ask you about the pass rush, I do want to go to another listener question from Cliff Victoria. It says, Chris, do you see similarities in the way Josh Allen started poorly and developed and the way that Justin Fields is currently? Because that seems to be like the great parallel that everyone likes to bring up is like, look what happened with Josh Allen his first couple of years. They were calling him a bust. His completion percentage was bad. And then look what happened when they go out and they get Stephon Diggs. So what can you tell us about that trajectory and what Bears fans can hold on to, thinking that it could potentially happen with Justin Fields, which I'm holding out hope that can still happen. So convince me, or just I would say humor us a little bit in that aspect.
No, look, I mean, there's certainly some wish projection. I mean, every team I feel like has, we saw that with Tua. They were making comparisons between him and Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is kind of that unicorn, right? That had those first 2 years that were kind of underwhelming, and then this enormous jump in his third year. I've seen some great stuff from Justin Fields. He's certainly an amazing athlete, and he can run the ball as good as anyone else in the league. I think when you've got a little further into this rebuild and you've got those receivers kind of solidified and the offensive line, and he's got some more development in terms of his passing acumen, there's a ton of potential there. And I would say, even if there's a bit of a regression, like, stick with this guy. He's shown enough so far that I would think. I mean, what do you guys think? At least through his rookie contract, right?
Oh my God, I've been sold on the kid forever, and I think that after we see some of these ridiculous plays, that a lot of the fan bases who may have been a little bit concerned, I think that he's changed a lot of minds, and just his demeanor, the way he handles himself. I think that the Bears got their guy, and now it's just building it around him. So we'll see if they can do the same thing that Buffalo did, try to put some things around him to see if they can take that next step. Which
I hope so. You're talking about two teams that know what quarterback purgatory is like.
Yeah. Which brings me to a great segue to my next question, because they've had a hard time keeping the kid upright. They have struggled with pass protection. What can you tell us about this Buffalo pass rush, and is Justin Fields going to be having to create some plays to get out of the pocket this week?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver coming up the middle, Daquan Jones. I mean, you wouldn't think it to look at the guy in his stat sheet, but he is great at collapsing the pocket. Between him and Ed Oliver, that they can create a lot of pass rush up the middle. Then you have to worry about Groot coming around the outside. And, whether it's Epinesa or Boogie Basham on the other side, Shaq Lawson has been playing really well on the end for the Bills too. I mean, they rotate a lot of guys through. I'm sure you guys know. Tim Settle is another guy on the D line. Jordan Phillips is hurt, so unfortunately we won't see him in this game. But it could be a problem. And one of the things I've noticed from watching Justin Fields is when the pocket starts to collapse, and I feel like he could maybe be a little bit more decisive in terms of just picking a direction and getting the hell out of there. I mean, I've seen him kind of, think he's going to go one way and then maybe second guess, and then he gets into a little bit of trouble, and that's when ends up on the ground. But he's got the legs to, in addition to running, to move and get to a better position to throw the ball. And I think he's been making plays like that. He's looked a little bit like Jalen Hurts and, dare I say, Patrick Mahomes at times.
Oh, easy now. Don't get us too excited here.
Those are some big names.
I mean, it's a little bit of a projection, but you can see where it
give it to us.
There.
Yep.
Yeah. We will take that. I mean, John and I have never had a franchise quarterback
in my lifetime. Never.
Just never. So we will take that for sure. And I want to kind of kick it over to special teams because we always get a kick out of talking about it, especially the Bears have had a number of special teams blunders. So I'm curious, are there any Bills players on special teams that we should be looking out for on Saturday, whether it's a kicker, a gunner, or a return man?
Oh man, I can certainly talk to you about the Bills special teams. They've got one of the best units in the league, and I think a good hallmark of a solid front office and coaching staff is the ability to bring in guys who are solid contributors on special teams. I mean, Tyler Bass, he should be an all-pro kicker. Bass Pro, Bass Money, T-Bass, Bass-O-Matic. He's got more nicknames than missed kicks. Like, he's great. And beyond just getting points, the Bills will very often have him kick the ball high in the air on kickoffs and have it, drop right around the 5-yard line. So you have to return it. And they're great at getting teams to start with negative field position. And we've got a good punter in Sam Martin, who again is good at pinning the ball inside the 20, making it a longer field. We have an elite gunner in Saran Neal. Watch out for number 33. He has at times had teams put 3 blockers on him to try to keep him from blowing up their returner. And then the biggest question mark going into this season for the Bills was their return specialist. And they seem to have solved that by bringing in Nyheim Hines at the trade deadline. Hines he's averaging over 10 yards a punt return with a long of 28, no fumbles. I mean, you can't really ask for much more. He had a couple of TDs with the Colts, and you can see that he could break one at any time. I mean, he doesn't waste time going side to side. He gets north and south quick, and he will take whatever's there.
All right, but hey, Chris, before we get you out of here, I know right now I think the spread is right around 9.5, I think, on this game. I'm not going to ask you who do you think is going to win, because then I know who you think is going to win this game. But do the Bills cover that 9.5-point spread against Chicago, who does play teams hard?
Yeah, they looked pretty good. I mean, against the Eagles without their top 3 receivers last week. I don't know. I mean, the Bills have not really done a great job of covering the spread so far this year. So I think there's certainly a chance that, it could be a 1-score game. Who knows? The weather might play a role here. Keeping the scoring low. You never know. It's tough to say.
So you're saying take the under. I like it. Hey, Chris, before we kick you out of here, continue to please tell our listeners and viewers where they can catch your work and connect with you on social media, because obviously the Bills season is going to go a lot longer than the Bears season, so we can keep up with all that Bills information. So how can people interact?
So right after this, I'm going to be producing the Cover One Buffalo podcast, hosted by Greg Tomset and Aaron Quinn. They're going to be breaking down this Bills-Bears matchup more. They're actually having Aaron's brother, Brian, who's a Bears podcaster, come on the show this week. And then Aaron and I are going to host a Twitter Spaces on Friday morning at 9:30. It's a casual roundtable. We'll let anyone in to ask a question or give a take. And we'd love to see some Chicago fans. So follow Aaron Quinn 716. We'd love to see you there. We'll have the post-game show after the game. And actually, I'll be co-hosting that this week, because Greg Tomset is taking some well-deserved family time. And then beyond that, I know that, aside from this week, your audience probably isn't super interested in Buffalo content. We did just launch a brand new Cover One fantasy football and gambling channel. So even if you're out of the fantasy football playoffs at this point, we've got some absolute wizards in there, giving you against the spread picks, player props. It's really great. And check it out. Cover One fantasy football and gambling channel on YouTube.
Prop bets are all I have left in this world right now, so I definitely got to tune into that. You can see who's going to score a touchdown or who's going to go over their passing yards. I need it. Feed it to me. So, yeah. Hey, Chris, we really appreciate you being on. Once again, Chris Kepner, contributor for Cover One, great source for Buffalo Bills information, a lot of other stuff going on as well. Hey, we'll talk to you down the road. Like I always tell people, we'll talk to you when the Bears and Bills meet in the Super Bowl. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Merry Christmas, guys. Go Bills.
Hey, same to you. Well, other than the Go Bills, but I'll let it go. Hey, we appreciate you, and have a great holiday. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Now it's time for our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. So, John, you ready to roll?
Yeah, I'm in the holiday spirit. Let's do it. Let's see if we can remain this weird streak of positivity that we have going on. Let's see if it sticks around.
Yeah, don't be getting all Grinch on me, okay? Don't be getting your Scrooge.
No promises. We'll see.
Okay, John. So the Bears had some chances to pull the upset against the Eagles, but they just couldn't make the plays to get it done. Did the fact that they were so close make this a tough loss for you? Or did you stick to your philosophy of just letting the 2022 season play out? 55 seconds are on the clock.
So, surprisingly, I was pretty calm, cool, and collected during that game. Sure, I was excited that they had a chance to pull the upset, and I was let down that they were lost, but I said on the show last week, I wanted to see Justin Fields play well, which he did. He had a 119.5 QB rating, which was the highest pass rating allowed by the Eagles all season, and Fields also had his top 3, possibly 4 wide receivers out, so I'll take that in addition to all the ridiculous running plays. I also wanted to see the Bears stay healthy, which obviously did not happen. Tevin Jenkins left on a stretcher, but Coach Eberflus said that his prognosis is pretty good. Jack Sanborn, who was one of the few defensive players I was still interested in watching, is on IR, and apparently Cody Whitehair suffered a fairly significant knee injury of some sort, according to a report. So the last thing you want as a bad team is injuries that can make a bad season worse or slow down a productive offseason. But overall, I was kind of chill.
Yeah, I mean, that was nice. I went into that game expecting the Bears to get the doors blown off them because I watched the Eagles put 40 plus on the Giants the week before, and I'm like, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was nice because, like, going into that not really expecting anything and watching the effort. And, I mean, coming out of that game, the one thing that I really felt was that Matt Eberflus is the guy. You know, like, look at how he has this team, that there are so many deficiencies on this roster. He has his guys ready to play not only this week, but every week. Most of their losses have been one score. And to come out against a top offense and a top defense, a Super Bowl contender, and to play like that and to scare them for 4 quarters was very impressive. And like you mentioned, Justin Fields, you know, getting to see him, I mean, it kind of feels like he plays better against some of these better teams in a way, like, you know, thinking back against like the Dallas game, the Miami, and, you know, the Vikings. I mean, there are some games where he just kind of, you know, steps it up, and to see him do that without his top 3, and then he lost EQ there, receivers, and that offensive line just was going to get him killed. I was so terrified. Like you said, the injuries was the one thing. And man, the loss of Sanborn, Tevin Jenkins going down. I mean, Whitehair. I mean, who's going to be out there on the offensive line? It's going to be, I think we're going to see Fields running for his life, or just, well, you know, running and entertaining us on Christmas Eve for sure.
Yeah, and I also said last week, I want to see how he responds to being a very heavy underdog to a Super Bowl contender, and he was obviously up to the challenge. He made as many plays as he possibly could. The team is just, there was, like I said before, every week almost you're going to be at a disadvantage in talent, and so they played as hard as they could. They almost had it, but there were encouraging parts of that game. I wish they could have stayed a little healthier, but that's football. It's a war of attrition.
And while they did lose this game, they technically won when it comes to draft order, looking ahead to 2023. Because after Sunday's slate of games, including that Bears loss, they are now sitting at the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 draft. So if things play out and the Bears hold firm at that number 2 pick, how big is that for this organization, and how excited should fans be? You got 55 seconds.
Okay, so even though I might have been wrong about the Bears' record this year, I think the number 2 spot is an incredible position for them. Listen, they don't need to draft a quarterback, and we see plenty of mock drafts that have the Bears taking Will Anderson out of Alabama or Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Both are defensive studs. However, that number 2 spot will be coveted by a lot of teams. We can see Houston taking Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick, but if you're a quarterback needy team, you want to be at that number 2 position if you love Will Levis or if you love CJ Stroud. And the only way to guarantee that you get that player is to trade up to number 2, where the Bears currently stand. So what are you willing to give up? A first-round pick next year, a second this year with multiple picks? If you're Chicago, you could trade back to, let's say, say Detroit at 5 or Indianapolis at 6 or even Atlanta at 7, pick up some big time draft capital and still draft a top 10 talent that could fill a hole on day one.
I don't want to wish away the rest of the season, these last 3 games, but I'm so excited for the 2023 offseason because I feel like we don't really know what Ryan Poles is going to do here. There's so many different options that he can because it's a win-win either way. You can, hold firm at that number 2 pick and go out and get, generational defensive talent in Anderson or Carter, or like you said, you can trade back with a quarterback needy team and acquire additional draft capital, which really sounds like Ryan Poles. So, we'll see because, looking at the Bears defense, that defensive line, they need some help. So, I could definitely see them holding firm and going with one of those guys. I don't know. We'll see how much, Matt Eberflus has to say because I feel like maybe, he's really pushing for Jalen Carter. I don't know. We'll see. But, it's exciting. It's weird to have 3 wins through 14 weeks and to, be excited about the future, which is a very new feeling for us here, especially Justin Fields has a lot to do with that. And so does the fact that it looks like they're a lock for at least the top 3 pick at this point.
Yeah. And there's you just wonder what the treasure trove of picks could be. And that just seems to be Ryan Poles' MO is to just, bogart all these picks and see if you can fill multiple holes with multiple picks, and especially if you get multiple second rounders or multiple first rounders. And to your point, it's interesting to it's just a big unknown right now with the offseason. It's scary, but it's also exciting. So it's something to just look ahead to. But there's just a little bit of nervous energy.
For sure. Ryan Poles, don't mess it up, please. Okay.
Yes.
Please don't. Like this optimism, it's newfound for us. We're enjoying it. We want to carry this over and make 2023 a whole new year. So please help us out here.
Yeah, please. That would make my 2023 get off to a hot start. I'm good. I'm good with that.
That would be amazing. So we're going to talk about something we don't really talk about a lot in here, special teams. And usually it's not good when we do. But there were some kicking woes that continued for Cairo Santos on Sunday. Santos missed his 5th extra point of the season, and the Bears opted not to kick a 48-yard field goal after when Santos was caught on camera testing the wind and telling a coach that they shouldn't kick it. Santos has shown that he can be a reliable kicker. But is there cause for concern moving forward? 55 seconds, go.
Well, I, not being a professional kicker, am assuming that the kicking game is very much psychological in addition to physical. But we've seen Cairo Santos kick well at Soldier Field, so we know he's physically capable. And 5 missed extra points may not mean much for a 3-11 football team, but it could mean a lot if the Bears are potentially playoff contenders next year. And listen, I know the aesthetics weren't good when the camera saw him throwing the grass up in the air and shaking his head no, as if to say he doesn't think they should kick it, but I don't know how common that is. He just happened to get caught on camera. Maybe a lot of kickers are forthright about the conditions being too bad. But if Santos does have a glitch in his kick, they can get out from underneath his contract pretty easily. He only carries a $1.5 million dead cap hit next year. So if they do want to move on, go ahead and add that to the shopping list for Ryan Poles. Offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, wide receiver. What the hell's a kicker at this point? Oh no, I think Alyssa froze up there. That's not good. And then Aldo jumps in and he's muted. So I'm flying solo here, man. I'm just hanging out. Anybody, I'm just yelling into the wind. Somebody come save me. Aldo, you there?
I am here. I think she's rebooting her computer and should be back any second. Listen, while you there she is. She's back.
Internet, guys.
What's going on?
It's coming. The internet spazzing out. My goodness. I'm Cairo Santos missing another extra point.
There was a glitch in your kick there. You got booted. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so we're talking Cairo Santos. I missed the rest of that, but no, I definitely agree with what you're saying. It does seem like a psychological thing with him, and I guess that it's. Not that it's good to be missing kicks and leaving points on the field, but at least it's encouraging that it's extra points and not field goals at this point. Yeah. But it's taken so long for the Bears to find a kicker after the whole Robbie Gould situation. So I don't know. I'm terrified to what if nothing else is out there and we had to go through this whole thing again? I don't think it would be like that. Matt Nagy's not in the building anymore. We're good. But the thing with Santos is kind of what's going on? And I do think obviously there's a psychological element to it. So hopefully, at least it's happening this season, right? When the Bears aren't contending for anything. Get it out of your system now, Cairo, and then let's move forward to 2023.
Alyssa, do you remember when we were doing this show in 2018 and into 2019, we thought that the only thing the Bears needed to upgrade was kicker after the double doink game thing, and they got everything. Everything's covered. Just add a kicker. And they're like, oh, if they could, I think it was when maybe the Patriots released Steven Gostkowski. They're like, oh, there's the answer. They're going to the Super Bowl now. And then after that, the season fell apart. And then they bring in this traveling circus of kickers, and they have like 25 guys trying out. Is it Chris Blewett? Is it Eddie Pinheiro? Who is it? Who's going to be in there? Connor Barth was there.
Elliott Fry. Remember, it was down to Pinheiro and Fry in training camp.
Yeah. So it was like, man. I don't want to go back to that. But also I don't think that is exactly how this new regime would handle that either. Like, hey, let's bust in 55 kickers and see if we can find one that can do it. So it is a concern, but in the grand scheme of concerns right now, is it like 7th on the list as far as what they really need to address? So if it comes down to only needing a kicker, I'll take that, because that means they're a really good team that needs a clutch kicker to put them over the edge. I don't know if a clutch kicker is going to make them a playoff team as they stand right now. So, like I said, add it to the list, because whenever you got all this money that you're going to be spending in the offseason, it's like, well, what the hell is a kicker? Just throw it on the list, see if they can go get one.
They got the money to do it too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, hey, if you want to go for it. And man, I miss those days when all we thought it was just the kicker. But I mean, I'm really glad we have Justin Fields. Like that was the biggest concern, and has been for our entire lives being Bears fans. So.
Yeah.
And beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's gonna be interesting to see how he handles it, Ryan Poles, because I mean, he's shown that he has no problems going in there and just kind of tearing the roster down, and he's not really tied to anyone at this point aside from his draft class and who he's brought in. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, It's interesting. Now I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Maybe it's on the outskirts. Maybe it's something worth monitoring.
Yeah, I don't think he has any. I feel like he doesn't have any loyalty to Cairo Santos, and so if he feels like he needs to move on, then go for it.
And someone that Poles does have loyalty to, but maybe could move on from, is third-round rookie Velus Jones, who had another rough game on Sunday. On a little gadget play, Jones fumbled the ball near the sidelines, and the Eagles recovered. Jones was drafted to be the speedy gadget player that could provide a spark in the return game as well. But with his fumbling issues and difficulty fielding punts, is it okay to label him as a bust already? You know the drill. 55 seconds.
I don't think it's too early to say that, simply because what we thought he was going to specialize in is actually a weakness. He was billed as a home run hitter that could take gadget plays to the house and possibly be a game-breaking punt returner. Well, he keeps fumbling the ball, and apparently he can't field punts either. So out of everyone that needs to go out on a high note in 2022, Velus Jones needs to attempt to turn the tide before February. I think it's safe to say the Bears are going to be quite active in the offseason, and they may not be done adding receivers. And if you're Jones, you don't want to go from being a third-round pick to being buried at number 5 on the depth chart your second season. I had moderate hopes for Velus Jones. The team seemed really jazzed about him, and I honestly didn't know much about the kid coming out of college, but I do know that if you're a 25-year-old rookie, you probably aren't going to get 2 to 3 years to figure it out. So as much as fans may not like it, the team may get Jones involved even more in these last 3 games to figure out if he's salvageable.
That's a great point too, because we're now in this day and age where, I mean, there's not really loyalty, right, to even first round picks after a season. I mean, look at the Raiders, parting ways with Leatherwood. Granted, that was a new regime coming in and everything, but I mean, we'll see, because Poles is going to build the best roster to surround Justin Fields, and that's going to be important. And like you said, I mean, this is going to be a big 3 games for Velus down the stretch here, because I mean, we've seen Kyler Gordon, for example, right? He had a rough start to his rookie year, but we've seen him really take steps forward, and he had his best game of the season last week against a really good Eagles offense. So, I mean, that's the progress that we've been wanting to see out of Velus. I know he's obviously hasn't got as many opportunities, but again, it's been kind of the same mistakes. Fumbles, I know there are 2 different circumstances, like Eberflus mentioned. Yes, you have the muff punts on special teams, you have the one on offense, but, this is going to be really important for Velus. He really needs to make a positive impact here moving forward, especially, taking advantage of these receivers that are out. Because I thought Claypool was going to play, but I mean, he didn't practice today. So we'll see. Maybe he's out another week. And this is an opportunity that, Velus gets. But I mean, didn't Simba Webster, I think he had more snaps on offense than Velus, which is not a good look.
This is supposed to be a perfect opportunity for Velus Jones to showcase himself, and he's not rising to the occasion right now. So that's concerning. It's not like the Bears have two studs that are, taking care of all the targets from the wide receiving core. This is a guy that has an opportunity where there's no one around him. Go make some plays. And unfortunately, it's just not working out. I mean, could things change? Sure, but it's not. Once again, he's not a 20-year-old. He's 25. And so that you need to be able to turn that around quickly, because I don't think they're going to be like, okay, we'll wait until you're 27 to see if you really get the game. No, you gotta be able to play. If you're going to be drafted at that age, you should be able to contribute right away. And unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, there are only so many roster spots for receivers. I mean, guys that are going to help Justin Fields. So Velus, I mean, you got a 3-game audition here down the stretch, so let's see what you got. See.
Let it play out.
Let it play out. Okay, John. So we're going to turn to this Saturday. It feels so weird that the Bears are playing on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It's Christmas Eve, and the Bears are yet again massive underdogs to another Super Bowl contender. What's your message to Bears fans as we get ready to mix holidays and football? No clock for this one. Take your time.
So let's try to put everything in perspective here. Saturday, Christmas Eve. I don't know what your plans are. Maybe you're having family over. Maybe you're just relaxing on the couch, wearing an ugly sweater and having some eggnog. Maybe you're working, which sucks. Trust me, I've been there. But Christmas Eve is a big deal in my family. In fact, it's probably bigger than Christmas Day. The family gets together, and yes, it's chaos. Yes, it's loud. Yes, there's a fist fight or two. And this year, we get an early gift with the Bears playing at noon, or 1 p.m. for us East Coasters. But I ask you to take this opportunity to leisurely watch the game while enjoying everything around you. Holidays are a wonderful deodorant for the stink of a bad football team. Don't let this game turn you into a Grinch. Don't let this game steal your holiday spirit. The Bears haven't given us many gifts this year, but hopefully that's because they are stockpiling them for next year. And when we hit week 16 in 2023, maybe we're having a different conversation altogether. So once again, please do not get too emotional over Saturday's game, unless they win. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
This is Flus's first year here. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't know these players. And they're learning him, and he's learning about them. And he's learning who he can trust and who he can't trust. Next year, he's going to know a lot more about these guys than he does this year. And the following year, even more. And he's going to know who he can trust and who's like. Perfect example. Lawrence, awful practice player.
Okay.
Okay. But come Sunday, that son of a bitch lit it up now. And I mean, there were practices where, he came in with a shirt, and underneath the shirt was his hands in handcuffs. And, and I'm not lying now. And he might have been out all night the night before. But come Sunday, it's a different matter.
I think we got another commercial there.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's time for the segment we call Buffone's Basement. It's the holiday edition of Buffone's Basement. That's whenever Alyssa and I walk down the stairs and we see Aldo Gandia passed out on his recliner with those little tin cookies that you get at the Christmas time they're just all over his chest, and he's passed out, eggnog just all over the floor. Aldo, how you doing, buddy? Happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Happy holidays. My uncle used to work at Maurice Linnell on Harlem Avenue in Norridge here in Chicago, and every Christmas he would hand out these tin cans of cookies, and then we learned later that he was stealing them, which is why he got fired from Maurice Linnell.
What a lovely holiday story, Aldo. That's one for the grandkids. Make sure
I
love that.
make sure you don't forget about that one whenever you're all huddled around the fire, talking about how your family member got fired for stealing cookies around Christmas time. That's what we do here.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, the real holiday
in
spirit.
my house.
Yeah. So, although you and I did the post game show, or we did a lot. We talked about a lot after that game, but you took that loss a lot harder than I did. And for those who may not have been watching the post game show, can you go into that a little bit, because you made great points and I understood what you were saying. I just couldn't bring myself to, I don't know what was in me that I was not throwing stuff. I was angry about the Packers game, livid about the Packers game. But this one, I didn't have that same kind of fire. Why did you?
Yeah, I asked myself that question too, because we all want to beat the Packers, but I took this defeat much, much worse, because this is the Philadelphia Eagles and they're the best team in the NFL. And this team needs a moral victory that is reflected also in the score of the game. And we have not had that. And that would have been just a great, great win against a team that will likely be in the Super Bowl. If not in the Super Bowl, definitely playing in the NFC Championship game. And, there was that battle between Fields and Hurts, because I put up on Twitter a few days ago or a week ago that I think it's quite possible that Fields and Hurts could be the two premier quarterbacks in the NFC, and that these guys are going to be doing battles against each other throughout the rest of the decade, and it's just going to be heaven. And so for this first matchup between those two quarterbacks, I was really pulling for Fields more so than the Bears. Frankly, as we all know, a lot of these Bears players are not going to be around much longer. And so I was just hoping that Fields can get that rivalry with Hurts off to a good start. Very disappointed afterwards, but the following day I was feeling hopeful again, because they did play that excellent team very, very tough.
Yeah, and I think that if this was the start of a rivalry, then it was a good start. Now, it wasn't, it didn't work out in the Bears' favor, but Justin Fields held his own. And he made some spectacular plays, and the Bears are right there, and it was a close 5-point game. So it's not like they didn't get trounced by 30 points. You're like, oh, I'm going to be a rivalry if they got smoked. Well, this could be the phase you got to go through. You lose to Hurts and you lose to the better team, but next year could be a different story. So we'll see. Alyssa, how did you take the Philly loss? Because I'm surprised at myself for the majority of the season that I've been so chill about a lot of this stuff. I don't know where this has come from. I didn't go on any medication. I'm not doing anything differently in my lifestyle. I'm just being a lot more relaxed about this, and I think I've come to terms with what this season was really going to be. How did you handle that loss?
Alyssa and I talk about your attitude quite often.
It's great.
No, but it's crazy because just like you, John, I get, you can get really into it and get emotional over some games. And I've been like that in the past, which is why it's been very weird over the last several weeks since this 7-game skid began, where I've been calm and just okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? But I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I know they got the quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. They got Fields, he's the guy, and now you got to build around him. And I think we all went into this season really knowing that 2022 they weren't going to be contending. It was going to be ugly. I don't know if we knew it was going to be this ugly, right? But trading some guys and getting rid of them and having this very young roster that is going to be one of the worst in the league. But, I was very impressed with that they were able to hang in there with the Eagles, and Aldo made a great point. And I would love nothing more than for Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields for that battle to be just the premiere of the NFC for the next several years. So, I mean, that's a really fun and exciting thought. And kind of seeing both of them, obviously not on the field at the same time, but kind of going back and forth between them. And, Hurts is the quarterback that Fields has been compared to most. He's the best comp. And it's really exciting because, when you look at where Hurts was last year compared to this year, and you look at Justin Fields, I mean, there's reason to believe that maybe Fields is ahead of where Hurts was, because you saw that Hurts had some talent last year on the offensive line, and he had Devontae Smith last year. They went out and traded for A.J. Brown. So, I mean, watching Fields and having him go out there and just do what he did with no help around him, and the offensive line almost getting him killed. I mean, dude's a warrior. He's a freak of nature. He's Superman. I feel like Justin Fields like because I keep using the word exciting, which is weird because they've won 3 games this season, but I think that's the Justin Fields effect. I think he's the reason why I've been calm, I think, is because I know they got the guy, which is something I've never had.
You're right. And it's because I think there's that calming presence, like, holy crap, we don't gotta go through the entire offseason talking about who can they trade for, who can they draft, or who's going to be available in free agency to maybe start for the Bears next year, where we've had that conversation more often than not on this show and more often than not throughout our entire lives to say, I wonder who they're going to bring in at quarterback, or what retread are they bringing in this year? Who's a guy that had a couple good years before, and the Bears are going to think, oh yeah, that's our guy. Like that. I mean, that's basically been the cycle for quite some time, where they take their shot at a first rounder and it doesn't work out. See Rex Grossman, see Cade McNown, see Mitch Trubisky, and then you see all the retreads that they bring in, the Chris Chandlers, the Nick Foles, the Andy Daltons. I mean, I can go on for an hour. We can do an entire show about that. Remember Cordell Stewart? Bringing in Cordell Stewart was a great idea. So it's like Jason Campbell, I think, started a few games for the Bears. So you want to just keep going through. We can do an entire show on past Bears quarterbacks, but the fact is, we don't have to do that right now because they have the guy at quarterback, which is a calming presence. And if Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields turn into this era's Brady and Manning in the NFC, so be it. Bring it on. Let's do that. And then the comp that we keep talking about is the steps and the progressions that Josh Allen took and that Jalen Hurts took. No, they have something similar too, that the Bills went out and got Stephon Diggs, and the Eagles went out and got AJ Brown in addition to Devontae Smith. So what are the Bears going to do? They go out and they get Chase Claypool. Now, I'm not sure that's as big as a move as, AJ Brown or as Stephon Diggs, but they may not be done either. So we'll see what happens in the offseason. And I think that's one of that scary, exciting feeling where it's like, we know this team is going to look drastically different in 2023. And they have almost unlimited funds right now. They can pick and choose who they want to bring in and what they want to attack in free agency. And they're going to have some draft capital on top of that, especially if they're at the number 2 position. So, and they feel like trading back. So it's this, oh my God, they got a good quarterback. What are they going to do now? Because normally it's just like, okay, we got to go on and find a quarterback. Now it's just like, we don't need a quarterback. Holy crap. What are we going to do about the defense? What are we going to do about the wide receivers? What are we going to do about the offensive line? We have the assets for it. Let's see what happens. And speaking of assets, if they stay at the number 2 position, and I talked about this in the B55 segment, they could have some suitors at that number 2 position that said, hey, we need a quarterback this year, or we're a quarterback away. And so we'll give you this year's first round pick and a second round pick this year, and you move back from 2 to 7, move back to 2 to 6 or whatever. Aldo, I'll start with you, and then Alyssa, jump in. If you had the number 2 position, would you take a defensive player like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, or would you say, you know what? I could probably use another first round pick next year and maybe an extra second this year. I'll move back 5 or 6 spots.
Yeah, let me answer that second question in just a second. I want to address what Ryan Crawford wrote here on the topic of Justin Fields. He says, if anyone gets a chance, check out Darius Slade's podcast where he gives props to Fields. Well, it just so happens, Ryan, that I chose a 15-second clip from that
what are the odds?
Yeah, exactly.
Great minds.
Yeah.
Listen to Darius Slade talk about Justin Fields.
Everything I heard about Justin Fields is true. Yesterday is my first time playing him, seeing him in live action and not on the film. And when I say he is a real true highlight film, he's a highlight film. He's magnificent out there. I'm not gonna lie.
And he went on and on and on and talked about specific plays, really complimented him on his toughness. He says, we hit him hard. Hassan Riddick is strong. And then he goes, really strong. Yeah. And he hit him hard. And when Fields left the game, we were all like, all right, we don't need to spy him anymore and so forth. And then he comes back and he marched to field the team downfield. So it was a tremendous compliment. Thanks, Ryan, for reminding me that I had that in the bin here.
That's our quarterback, guys. That's our quarterback.
Yeah.
How about that? Isn't that awesome? But to answer your question, yeah, I still want to do some more studying on those 2 picks, but I have been for the last few weeks thinking that if we get the second overall, I truly believe that there are going to be a number of phone calls to the Chicago Bears because they're teams fall in love with quarterbacks. When they need a quarterback, there's going to be a team that's going to be falling in love with Will Levis. That's Greg Gabriel's favorite quarterback coming out of this draft. He didn't have a great season at Kentucky, but he didn't have the supporting cast that Stroud and the other quarterbacks have had. So whichever quarterback, some team is going to fall in love and make a ridiculous offer to Ryan Poles, and then you've just got to jump on it. And that ridiculous offer could include multiple number one picks for 2022 to 23, 24, and maybe even 25. And so you just can't say no to that with a team that has so many holes. And so there's the possibility of not only just landing one superstar player, but multiple superstar players, and you still have Fields under his rookie contract, and you've had these other superstars behind him in terms of contract. That's a foundation for a great effing football team. And so I am all for trading that pick and bypassing Carter or Anderson.
Yeah, I know. I like you, Aldo. I haven't really started my draft homework yet, but that's coming. So, I mean, at this point, just kind of like sitting back and kind of weighing both options. But again, if the price is sweet enough, hell yeah, I'm trading that pick. Like, I mean, like you said, there are so many holes. I mean, yes, the defensive line needs a lot of help, right? Whether you get Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, like both of those are huge needs. But at the same time, there are other needs on this team as well, especially on offense. So you sweeten the pot. My goodness, multiple first-round picks. I'm going to trade that back because, like you said, there are so many teams that talk themselves into a quarterback, right? Into trading extensive draft capital. Look at what the 49ers did, getting Trey Lance. Should have gotten Justin Fields, but whatever. You know, I'm glad you did. Thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you for that. We'll forever be appreciative. But yeah, so I mean, I'm someone who I'm always going to want to, I think, especially with Ryan Poles, knowing how he operates, trade back and acquire additional draft capital and go out and get multiple surefire star players. So, I mean, at this point, I mean, if the offer's sweet enough, I'm taking it.
Yeah, and I've said when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I said it depends on what number you're trading back to. If you're trading back to 6 or 7, I think you can still get a surefire great player to plug a hole on day one. If it's someone that wants to move up from like 16, then you're going to need a king's ransom for that kind of. We're talking 3 first-round picks to move up for that, because then that'll cover what you're giving up there. And even then, it depends on what you're going to attack with that pick, because how many times, and God willing, how many times are you really going to be at the number 2 position? And you're hoping that it's not often. And how many times you're going to be in that position where you can get a guy of that kind of caliber? And that's why I'd be willing to trade back to 5, 6, 7. But I don't know if I don't know if I want to trade back to 13, 14, 15, 16, unless you're getting an absolute ridiculous haul from that. So I think it does matter who's trading up from what position. And I think some of the current mock drafts have like Indianapolis at 6, possibly, or Atlanta at 7. Both those teams could probably use a quarterback. And, in Indianapolis, most likely will have a new head coach going into next year who would probably like to pick his quarterback moving forward. So they could be a team that says, you know what, let's go up at 2 and get our guy if they truly love Stroud or Levis or whatever. Then they could potentially be a trading partner in that process. So for me, I'm fine moving back 4 or 5 spots if it means you get an extra high pick, an extra first-round pick, an extra maybe multiple second-round picks or whatever, and then still take a guy in the top 10. I'm just probably not willing to move back into the teens at this point, because you never know when you're going to be back there, and God willing, you're not back there in a position where you're drafting number 2 again. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. Although we talked about this a little bit after the game, and I don't know if we've had any time to. I've had some time to stew on it, but. And Alyssa and I talked about it. The Velus Jones situation. Is this a guy that's playing himself out of not just out of like a starting position, but possibly as a guy? Because are you going to put a 26-year-old in the practice squad next year? Is that what you're going to do with this guy?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world if he had another season of getting acclimated to the game, knowing that, of course, you're probably not going to re-sign him when his contract is up. But my hope is this with Velus Jones is that because by all accounts, the guy is a super cool guy, very professional, shows up to meetings in a suit and a briefcase. He's very well spoken. He's very likable. All of the players saying he's just focused on getting better and better. And so how can you not hope for the best for any person like that? And so that's my hope for Velus Jones, is that he's going to, hopefully he will get more opportunities and he will start to show more on the plus side. But I have no problem if he does get opportunities these last remaining 3 games and he does not play well. I have no problem of saying, listen, you're coming back next year because you're under contract, but we will not tolerate this. You've got to be ready to rock and roll in camp, and you will find yourself on the street having lost an NFL career, the possibility of an NFL career, because we will drop you and you'll just be our 3rd round bust. So, I'd handle it with tough love, but underlining love, because I want to give this guy every opportunity.
And Alyssa, I think that Matt Eberflus kind of said, I don't want to say said that, but he was very direct about that in the post-game press conference. I don't like it. And I think and that's about, he's not going to go into any more detail, but I can guarantee there's a conversation that was held afterwards, basically saying this is completely unacceptable. And whatever you got to do to fix this, then you got to fix this. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if a jugs machine is going to help you not fumble. I don't know if there's a certain, fumble coach you bring in, because remember, I'm old enough to remember when Tiki Barber was a fumbling machine, and then he changed his grip and he started holding it high and tight, and the dude didn't fumble ever again. Oh, well, figuratively speaking. But it's like, is there something like that could potentially fix this? Because right now he's not making any kind of dent in the receiving game. They're getting them some gadget plays, and we thought that he was going to be the full-time punt returner, and he can't do that either. So how do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe Darnell Mooney needs to have him over, let him use his jugs machine. Just let him get that work in the off season. I mean, yeah, Aldo hit the nail on the head. He seems like a really great guy. So, you want to root for him. You want him to do well. But, at some point, the production needs to start showing up on the field. And, the first season, I wouldn't necessarily cut him after this year. But, again, next season, he needs to take that noticeable leap. He's going to have an entire offseason, right, to especially to further learn this offense. We'll see if Luke Getsy has a bigger role for him. Kind of going back to when Velas's first struggles, in the punt return game, he was benched for 2 games, I believe. So, I'm really curious to see exactly how Matt Eberflus is going to handle that. We got 3 games left. You're down 3 receivers at this point, or possibly 4. We'll see. So, at this point, you really need all the bodies you can get, but we'll see whether they just kind of keep him on special teams, or maybe he gets a couple up more opportunities. But again, Simba Webster getting more snaps in offense, just it speaks volumes, and it's not good. But again, it's his first year, so I'm not giving up on him yet. But he's going to need a noticeable turnaround this offseason to really get into gear.
Yeah, John, Alex Brown, a former Chicago Bears player who does a lot of work in the media, he said, I'm refreshing my Twitter to see if Velus Jones and Cairo Santos have been cut, because he expects that to happen. And I have to disagree with my man, Alex. Great guy. I've met him a couple of times. There's just no way you're going to cut Velus Jones this season. Unless he has done something egregiously wrong off the field. What has happened on the field would normally get you kicked off the field, but not with this team. Not with injuries to the wide receiver position. And the same thing with Santos. The $1.5 million you'd lose if you cut him, that's pocket change. But are you going to bring in a kicker with 3 games left and tell him go out there and kick in the cold? No, let Cairo do it.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Backley did a pretty good job when he was here. Santos but the Lions have him now, so.
Yeah. And this is not a team that's angling for a high playoff seed right now. So it's not like you have to make these on the fly, we need to fix the kicker position right now, because if not, oh no, we might go what 3-14 as opposed to 4-12. Like, what are we doing? 4, whatever. There's 17 games now. I can't do math. I've been doing the same math my entire life, and now I got to go from 16 to 17. It's a very difficult transition for me.
It happened to me too when the league went from 12 games to 14 games, but that was about 30 years before you guys were born. So
you must have been through a whirlwind when they stopped using leather helmets.
Oh my goodness! Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on.
Do you have a leather helmet, Aldo? Oh my goodness!
Oh my God, he's got it.
When they introduced the face mask and the forward pass, I'm sure you had no idea what the hell was going on the first time you saw that. Whenever you went to the
high school football helmet.
Whenever you went to the Nickelodeon and saw a picture show of the Galloping Ghost in all of his glories. I don't know where I'm pulling these metaphors from, or these things, by the way.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. I think that getting back to Velus Jones, the much more interesting topic, is the fact that he's going to have, like Alyssa said, he's going to have a 3-game audition here. And let's not forget that this guy started his professional career hurt. He didn't get a whole lot of time in the beginning of the season. He was injured and then kind of got eased into things, and it didn't work out well. So I don't think that he necessarily needs to be cut. But to label him a bust and basically be a special teamer, and when I say special teamer, I mean, like, I don't know, a gunner or something like that. See, if he's able to do that, then fine. If he is able to fix the yips where he can actually field a punt, then great. If I'm him, I'm spending most of the off season catching punts and making sure that I have a role on this team rather than being the expendable 5th receiver that could get cut if they need to bring in another guy. If someone goes down on the D line and they have to go sign someone off the practice squad and then they just cut Velus Jones, you got to make yourself non-replaceable. And so if you're the guy that is like, oh, I'm the punt returner, I have to do that, I'm the best at that, then you're going to have a place on the team. You don't want to make yourself expendable at any point. And if you're a second year 3rd round pick who happens to be 26 years old and is not making any progress, then you start thinking of, is this a guy that we can drop for something else? So once again, with everything else with the Bears, time's going to tell. We gotta let that play out. So let's go a little short term. We're talking long term. Let's go short term. They do have a game this weekend. So let's talk about the game, not necessarily the game on the field, but let's talk about what we're going to be doing, because it's going to be Christmas Eve. So I'm going to be very chill about this. I'm going to be relaxing. I'm going to be back home in the Pittsburgh area, out in the woods, probably with terrible cell phone service, awful Wi-Fi. I'm not going to have to, deal with any of this stuff. I'll probably stay off of Twitter for most of the day, God willing. So how are you guys going to be spending this game? Alyssa, you probably have to write like 25 articles after this thing. So but,
I'm working.
So yeah, let's get the buzzkill out of the way. Alyssa, what are you going to be doing? And then we'll go to Aldo, who probably just has his shelves stocked to the gills with stuff for Saturday.
That's right.
Definitely be working during this game. Also trying to sit back and relax and enjoy. So, I normally go really hard when it comes to, writing and churning out articles. Maybe I take a step back, right? It is the holidays, so I'll get my game content. And then I think after that, I'm going to take a step back and enjoy, because like you said, John, I'm going to be at my dad's. His birthday is actually the day before. So like, we're going to, we're Italian, so we celebrate on Christmas Eve. So, we're going to do that. So I'm going to get the game stuff out of the way and then just relax and, maybe do a couple posts on Christmas Day, but I want to try to just enjoy a game and do the bare minimum. No pun intended.
You're definitely a writer. You worked that in there. I can tell. Aldo, what are you gonna make it through the game?
I'm gonna make it through the game.
It's at 1 or noon.
Noon for him.
I'm gonna pop into the Barfly Tailgate show. They're having a special Christmas show where a lot of the barroom people are going to pop in either via video or live, and so I'm gonna pop in for a little while and wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Then I'll watch the game, and then I'll run over to my sister-in-law's house. She hosts Christmas Eve every year, and I love going over there because she cooks tremendously. And so I'll just chill. Hopefully it'll be a good game, because if the Bears lose badly, then it seems like everyone in the family blames me for it because I do these podcasts.
This is your fault.
It's all your fault.
Don't complain.
Velus fumbles. It's your fault.
Oh. Yeah. Although you put together a really crappy team, you know that?
That's right. I'm sorry.
You got the quarterback right. You got the quarterback. You're good.
Fix it, Aldo. What the hell?
Exactly. So let's see.
All right. So the last thing I want to do before we wrap things up is, although I'm not sure, I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have the spaceship graphic available, but we have the schedule. Listen. In the open, I said the Bears are not a 3-win team, and it looks like that's becoming the actual.
We really need to change that open.
Yeah, we got to change that. Well, I'm going to own it. I was wrong. And like I said on the post-game show, if you're just now catching on to the fact that I'm wrong about everything, then that's more of an indictment on you, because I've been wrong about everything for the last 6 years, and you're just now catching on. So anyway, let's look at the last 3 games. We got the Bills, the Lions, and the Vikings. Can the Bears play Grinch to any of these teams? Because the Bills, they're kind of angling for, their positioning in the playoff seeding. The Lions are hanging on for dear life. They have some slim playoff chances. And, of course, the Vikings, they're going to win the division, but where are they going to stand in the seeding? So can the Bears screw up anyone's season? I'm not going to say they're going to screw up the Bills' season, and the Lions are playing pretty well right now, and that's on the road. Maybe the Vikings. I don't know. They did come back, one of the best comeback of all time against the Colts. But why were you down 33-0 to begin with? So we'll see. Aldo, start with you. Can they play Grinch to any of those teams?
Yeah, the Lions. Absolutely. The Lions, because the Lions are the Lions. And Don Burr is in our chat room. He's our resident Lions troll. I love him. I love him when he's
interesting. I'll say that.
He's getting pushed around in the bar room. The bouncers are just turning their head the other way as he's getting
Hold your own respect.
Yeah.
But I really do believe they're capable of beating the 2 teams on that schedule. The Vikings will probably be resting players. And so if the Bears elect to play Justin Fields and the other starters in that game, which I'll be at, and hopefully it'll be a balmy 30 degrees. So that's quite possible. And I truly believe they're capable of going to Detroit and upsetting the Lions. Now, the Lions are playing their best ball of the season. They're really starting to gel. But I need to see more from this Lions team before I'm a believer. They've got a stacked roster. I've complimented them since before the season started that this roster is loaded with talent. And Goff is playing perhaps his best football since was he MVP for the Rams that one season or close to? He received MVP votes in the 2019 season. So, they got a good squad, but I do believe that the Bears have it in them as long as they don't quit on the coach, and there's no signs of that happening.
Alyssa, they got a win in them.
I mean, I don't know. I'm saying no at this point, but I mean, at the same time, the Bears have shown that they can play with anybody and that there's always a chance that they can win. They're keeping things close with really good teams. And I think of all of those final 3, I think the Lions scare me more than anybody because they're the only ones that actually need to fight for a playoff spot at this point. The other 2, they're locked in. So, I mean, at this point, the Lions are playing their best ball at this time of the year, and this is going to be in Detroit, and the Bears Lions games have always been a little bit closer at Ford Field. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I think the Vikings is probably the closest one because if they're resting their starters, then okay, I will say there's 1 win left on there. But I don't know if they're still, competing for, I don't know, home field. Not home field advantage, but I don't know. Well, yeah, they won't. No, they're going to be resting their starters. Who are we kidding?
Probably won't have anything to play for.
No, they won't. So
it would be a very Bears thing to do, though, is to win that last week, and then they end up picking 3 or 4 in the draft, and that's it throws things off in a meaningless game. If the Vikings are resting their starters, the Bears go in, and we're probably going to have that conversation. Are you ready for them to win this game and have that good one to go out on? But oh crap, now they're picking 4th. Is that a conversation that we're gonna have? That's for a later time. We're getting ahead of ourselves. If they beat the Bills, then we're not even talking about this. Then
right.
They go out,
quick question for you guys. So you get to the last week. Let's say you've lost against the Bills, obviously, and the Lions, and so now the Vikings have chosen to rest their starters. Do you then just say to Justin, take this week off? We know it would be great for you to get some valued snaps, but we don't want you out there. We don't want to risk injury and so forth. Would you be okay with them sitting Fields for that final game of the season?
I don't think you're going to convince anyone in that locker room that you're doing it to rest Fields. I think that if you rest Fields, and for those people listening to the audio, I'm using the finger quotes. If you rest Fields, you're saying we got to lose this game. We got to lose this game to preserve the number 2 pick. And that's basically what you'd be doing. And listen, I know we've talked about this before. We don't know how many of these guys are actually going to be under contract next year anyway. How many of these guys are actually going to be on the Bears roster next year anyway? We talked about wanting to get one for the core players of this team after the game last week. I'm like, who are the core players? Who's the core veterans that we're trying to keep invested? It's like Eddie Jackson and Jalen Johnson. Is that the core players we're talking about right now? And then on like the most who's the most tenured guy on offense, I think is Cody Whitehair, who might not be on the team either next year. So it's I get that you want to have a good atmosphere in the locker room, you want to have a good culture, but if you're not even sure who's going to be here next year outside of the quarterback and maybe 2 guys on defense, 3 guys on defense, and the secondary is taken care of on defense. But as far as the linebackers and D-line, you don't know who's going to be there. Don't worry about the culture so much and then worry more about progressing the talent, progressing the scheme. And if that results in a win, then it results in a win. I'm not gonna come on here and bitch that the Bears won. I'm like, oh crap, they won. Like I don't have that in me. I honestly don't. And I'm not. That's not disparaging anyone who takes that tank mentality. I get it. I 100% get it. You're just lose out and get the number 2 pick. I completely understand that. And you are well within your rights as a fan to feel that way. I have a hard time doing that. I can't watch a Bears game and be like, come on, guys, lose. Come on, guys. I just can't do it. Now, and after the fact, I might be happy about it. Like in 2 or 3 weeks after the fact, I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty glad they lost that game because now they're going to get the number 2 pick. In the moment, I can't do it. It's just difficult for me to do that. So we'll see. For my own benefit, you would think that I'd want them to win 2 games there because I sound like an idiot on the open saying they're not a 3-win team. Well, they kind of are. So I'll gladly own that. That's fine. Like I said, I'm wrong about everything. So if you're gonna give me crap about being wrong about the Bears record, like, hey man, you've missed a slew of crap I've been wrong about in my life. So come on, let's you're not gonna insult me. Like, that's not gonna do much to me because I'm more wrong than I am right, and that's kind of my shtick now. I'm wrong about stuff. I don't try to be wrong, but I am. So that's just how it works out now. As we wrap things up, what do we got going on in the bar room this week? And I know we got probably an altered holiday schedule of some sort.
We do indeed. Tomorrow live at 2 p.m. It's Crosstown Crosstalk, our baseball show. Vinny Parisi will talk about the latest, and there's big signings in Chicago baseball, so he'll go through those. I'm not sure who his guest is, but he lands some really excellent guests for that show. So that's live at 2 p.m. And then at 6 p.m., it is the Mac and Reed show. Those guys will do their holiday show and talk about some of the latest Chicago Bears. And then on Saturday, it will be our only coverage of Bears football, and it is the Barfly Tailgate show before the show and before the game, and they will have a Christmas extravaganza with a lot of barroom people on board to at least say hi and talk a lot of football, and then we'll be back with our regular programming on Monday.
Alyssa, parting shots. What do you got?
Parting shots. Again, gonna try to do the bare minimum this week. I've actually had the last couple of days off because it was mandatory. Big corporate stuff and all, mandatory furlough. But just been relaxing.
Been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but still gonna have plenty of coverage, leading up to. I'm gonna kind of, pull it back a little bit, like on Christmas Eve. And on Christmas, I still have to, I never want to leave the site empty. So we're going to have plenty of content on Christmas, maybe not as much as usual, because let's be real, people might want to, are going to be on their phones when they're at the family if they want to kind of, stay out of some conversation. So we got to give the people some stuff to read. So we will have that on Bears Bar. So
spoken like a true digital journalist in today's world, where it's like, what if someone's scrolling through their phone and they're looking for a bear story? I gotta be that story. And it's just like, now you gotta be plugged in 24/7. Times have changed, and I spent 10 years in that, and I'm just kind of glad that I don't have to do that anymore, worrying about what people were scrolling through on Thanksgiving and Christmas and all these other holidays. It's like, well, if they're looking for a story, why can't it be my story? Done with that. You're a machine, Alyssa. I can't believe that you get all this stuff on there. You're just churning stuff out like crazy. I could never do it. So, God willing that you have a little bit of time to rest during the holidays, because you certainly deserve that. And so,
Indeed.
As we fade this out, I just want to thank everyone in the chat room, everyone who's listened to the show, watched this show. Have a great holiday season. I know it's not easy to keep talking about a 3-11 team, and yet you guys come back every week. I can't tell you how much that means to me. It means to everybody in the Barroom Network. It's just incredible that the community we have built here, where we can keep talking about this team, even as bad as things are, as inconsequential as some of these things are. We come back every week and we keep talking about them, and if you guys weren't here, we wouldn't be here. So I just want to thank every one of you, especially during the holiday season. I appreciate it. It blows my mind that people are still listening to the show 6 years after the fact. So it means so much to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to everyone at the Barroom. So thank you very much, and that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. For Aldo, Gandia, and Alyssa Barbieri, I'm John Buffone. Have a great holiday, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Happy holidays.
This defense sucks.